Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and as you can see, I am really trying to make an effort here to catch up on things. I have the 4-hour What I Watched video come out. Hope you guys enjoyed that, by the way. I'm sorry it was so long, but there was literally no other way around it. I talked about over fucking 60 movies, I think, in that video. So, like, it was always going to be long by design. You know, there's a bunch of movies I have to review, there's a bunch of TV shows, but the one thing that I have not reviewed, that I can't believe I still have not done a review for, is somehow not reviewing the last 2 episodes of Stranger Things Season 4. I don't know how this happened. I watched it pretty much around the time everybody else did. I rewatched the last episode like 2 times. I don't understand why I didn't just go ahead and review it then, but something was keeping me from doing so. I had a very busy summer. Last month, I was just kind of like exhausted and tired all the time, so I just didn't feel the motivation to get anything done, and now this month, I'm like, you know what, this is ridiculous. We have 4 months left this year. I am like 2 months behind on reviews. I'm going to do what I can to catch up, and the first step in doing that is, besides the What I Watch videos, is finally getting Stranger Things out of the way. Don't let this hang over my head constantly and haunt me, and haunt me like Vecna with like the clock and things like that. You know, I don't want to go through that. I want to be able to review this show that I love. But yeah, without further ado, I'm rambling on as I always do. This video is going to be fully with spoilers because, look, these 2 episodes have been out for 2 fucking months. If you want to watch the show at this point, you've already watched it. I don't think there is a way to review these last 2 episodes without doing a spoiler review, so I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys know now. This will be fully spoilers, but we're just going to go ahead and finally dive first into these 2 episodes. So for this video, I'm not really going to talk about these 2 episodes individually. I'm going to talk about them, like, you know, as a group, like I did with the first 9, but obviously here I'm going to get a lot more spoilery in that way. And I'm just kind of going to go, you know, plot by plot through things I liked, how everything turned out, where I think they're headed in the final season of the show, all that stuff. But we're going to go ahead and start off. I think the first thing I really want to talk about here is actually Dr. Brenner, because where they went with his character was not at all what I was expecting them to do. I thought from the way things started off in Season 4, with us seeing the genuine care he had for a good amount of the people that, you know, were in his facility and things like that, you know, and him kind of treating them, you know, like they were his actual children, like the whole thing with 10, for example, in the first episode. I thought they were trying to lead us towards this arc where we got to understood Brenner a little bit more. We got to see his point of view. We got to understand that he wasn't as bad as we thought he was. He was kind of heading down this redemption arc of sorts, and that is not at all what ended up happening. Instead, what we got is just further confirmation that this guy is a fucking monster, and I really love the way they ended up going about that, because they really did a good job of almost convincing me that the way Brenner was going to die, because I knew he was going to die. This episode's called Papa. Of course he's going to die. Like, that was something that was pretty obvious to me, but I thought he was going to end up sacrificing himself for 11. Turns out it was the complete opposite. Basically, the way this ends up going down is, you know, 11 gets the sense that Max is in trouble. We'll get a little bit more into that when we talk about, you know, everything they do in Hawkins and things like that. But 11 gets the sense that Max is in trouble. You know, she has that connection to Vecna and things like that. She wants to now, you know, get to Max because Max wants to sacrifice her, you know, wants to trap herself to Vecna and things like that. And, you know, 11 doesn't want her to do that alone. And basically her entire thing is, you know, she needs to leave this facility now. She has to get out of here, and I really like seeing the different sort of, you know, duality between how Dr. Owens feels about this and how Dr. Brenner feels about this, because it really gave us the confirmation that one is trying to help her and one is trying not to. We can see that Dr. Owens is very much on the side of like, you know, we're going to continue doing what she does, but if she's ready to leave, we're going to let her leave. Well, you can see that Brenner, he has all these other plans for her. He wants to continue the work that they did in season 1. He wants to keep her pretty much as his pet in that way. And when we get to the moment where, you know, we see we see all of these government officials are starting to close in. They're gonna come after 11 because they believe that she is like this murderous weapon that needs to be destroyed. And they're just gonna completely just decimate the facility, you know, to shreds. Brenner wants her to stay. He wants them to continue the work that they did together, and not let her leave until he says so. And we realize, again, just how terrible of a person that he is. Even if he doesn't realize it, he is a horrible person. He is holding her hostage. He is trying to use her powers for himself. He's trying to treat her like she's a science experiment. I mean, it's disgusting, and I really like the way that they went about it here. We saw also that he has genuine care for Henry. He wanted to find a way to get Henry back when Henry was initially when Henry initially went through the Upside Down. And so again, I really like what they ended up doing with him as a character, because they really did mislead us. And the moment where 11 is just laying into him that like, no, you have been the monster all along. You are the person behind everything, is such an amazing moment for 11. She's no longer going to let him manipulate her and just kind of let him do the things that he's doing. She's really gonna let him, you know, suffer for what he did. She wants him to pay, and it's a really incredible moment for this character. You could tell how scared she was of Brenner for the longest time, and at this point, she isn't even slightly unscathed by him. She knows entirely what he's trying to do, and it's simply just not going to work on her anymore. And it's Millie Bobby Brown just killed this scene so much. I mean, every season, I'm just reminded of how amazing of a talent that she really is, but scenes like this especially really just show us how incredible she is at delivering, you know, and pouring out her emotions. And I just really was so impressed by the way all of this turned out. But then the way he ends up dying, I thought was just perfect. I love the way this turned out, where basically, you know, they have to get out of there. 11 ends up pretty much just destroying this plane. The plane falls to the ground through 11's powers. This is like the most cinematic Stranger Things has been. And I already said season 4 feels like a movie, but they really pulled out all the stops in these last 2 episodes to make this feel as epic as possible. And with like the music swelling and things like that. I mean, this was such an amazing sequence, but especially when it comes to Brenner. When he's trying to apologize to her, when he's lying there dying and saying, everything I did for you. I need you to understand that. I need you to forgive me. And she doesn't give him that satisfaction. She walks away and says no. It was just the perfect closure for this character, because 11's now gotten to a point where she's outgrown him. He's not a threat to her anymore. She now understands what he was trying to do. There's no more clarity that she needs. She has a handle of who she is. She knows that she's not a monster. She knows that she didn't kill all of the people in she didn't kill all the people at the lab and things like that. She had nothing to do with any of that. And this has kind of given her that clarity, and it's really amazing to watch her go through that journey. I know a lot of people said early on the season that, like, the stuff with 11 in Hawkins' labs, the flashbacks, is boring. This isn't something that we need to see. And I think we can see through this episode why they did it the way that they did. The whole entire season is 11 basically convincing herself that she is a hero. She is meant to achieve goodness. She is meant to save others. She's not this monster. She doesn't have this rage inside of her that she thought that she did. She convinced herself that that was the case, and now, you know, piecing together everything that happened, she now feels the most powerful that she ever has and the most determined to make sure that things are right. And when she gets to reunite with Mike and all of them, it was just such an amazing moment, the way that turned out. I love the way that entire sequence was done. I really thought they handled Dr. Brenner's death in the best way they possibly could, and I really hope this is the end of that character. I think it was the right choice to bring him back back because there was still work that needed to be done. We still needed to see more of like his true motivations and things like that. But now that we realize that he really was just this really awful, very selfish scientist in that way, and that he really was just trying to use 11 for his own self-worth, I think we've gotten everything we could out of this character, and him kind of being oblivious to that, and then him trying to constantly lure her back in, this kind of predatory type relationship. I think they really closed it off in the best way that they possibly could. I really like the way they handled Dr. Brenner this season. I thought Matthew Modine was just on fire this entire season. I mean, you could tell that I think he knew that this was going to be the last of his character, and he wanted to, I think kind of tie up some loose ends, and he really did get to do that here. Like I said, that scene where Brenner is confessing to 11, and her, him trying to get her to say that she forgives him, I almost thought for a second that she was, and the fact that she didn't, I was just so impressed by the way that all went down. Such an amazing sequence, and they really couldn't have handled that any better, I think, than they did. In so many shows, when it comes to like the big villain in a sense, they and especially when they die, they try to give them like some kind of send off, and I like that they actually didn't end up doing that for Brenner. They just kind of said like, yeah, this guy was a piece of shit. He caused a lot of harm to 11, and she's recognized that, and so she's not gonna give him that satisfaction. He's responsible for a lot of the emotional torture that she has gone through, and she's content with just letting him die. She's not going to dwell on it anymore. She's not going to try to constantly, go back to him. She's basically gotten everything she's needed to, and it's such an amazing moment of development for 11, someone who started off the show, so scared, so unsure of what to do, and she's really grown to somebody that's so strong and powerful, and has really been through so much, especially this season with all the, horrific bullying she was going through. Her finally coming into her own in that way, it was just such an amazing moment, and I really love the way those handled. Millie Bobby Brown just killed that whole sequence, and I just really loved everything they did in terms of the Brenner 11 storyline, how they end up closing that out here. Okay, so before we get to everything else that happens, within this finale, I do quickly want to talk about the things going on within the California part of the show, because there's not a ton to talk about here. We get a little bit more of what's going on. First of all, the one thing that I was surprised about is that girl that it seemed like was going to be along for the ride, that was in like Susie's group home or whatever, we don't see her at all. We also don't see Susie again. I think that's like the only time that we do see her. We hear about her a little bit. Her and Dustin haven't, I think, we definitely hear about her a little bit more, but we don't really get to see her at all aside from that one episode. And I thought it made sense. She was kind of just like this. She was helping them, get the information that they needed. But I like that they put the focus back on Mike and Will and how their relationship is really going, because we see that Mike is feeling really guilty with how things went down with 11. He wants to be able to kind of make that up to her. He wants to confess his true feelings, and Will, in an effort to, I think, get Mike to understand how he feels, kind of goes through the scenario of what he should say to 11 and how she feels about him, that he is, the greatest thing within her life. He's her superpower and all this stuff, and you realize through this moment that Will is confessing his feelings for Mike. And look, I know that Noah Schnapp has said that they are keeping things really subtle. They're not going to reveal anything with Will's character. But with the way this is going down, they have to be setting something up here. I mean, this was such an amazing moment for Noah Schnapp. You could tell how Will was feeling in this moment. It's like this weight is lifted off his shoulders, but it's not, because Mike doesn't recognize that he's talking about him. He's too oblivious to realize that. I just thought this was such an amazing moment for his character. You could feel like this is something he's been holding back for a long time. And the scene later on in the finale with Jonathan, where Jonathan is basically telling Will, like, look, I know that we have been a bit distant recently, but I accept you for who you are. There's nothing that will change that. I feel like Jonathan is aware that Will has these feelings and he fully accepts him for it. And it was just such an amazing moment to see that, especially because I think with the way this season ends, I think Will is going to be a pretty big focal point for season 5, or at least I hope so, because it seems like that's what they're setting up here. And I think with us getting these 2 scenes, it really gives us a sense that we are going to get a lot more with Will moving forward. And I hope so, because Noah Schnapp is just so good in this role. He never has as much to do as some of the other characters, but I feel like him being as good as he is and them giving him these moments make up for it. And I can't say that I don't think Will had nothing to do this season. It was just a very subtle arc in that way, and I really liked what they ended up doing with him this season. So I really like that moment a lot. I think it's one that a lot of people are going to be talking about, and rightfully so, because it's a really incredible moment. But that's definitely something I think that is going to be re-explored within season 5. How that all goes down, I'm not really sure, but that was a really amazing moment, and I thought, again, that was something that was handled just really well this season. With that being said, let's get to Hawkins, because the one thing I do want to point out, obviously there's a lot to talk about here, but the one thing I do want to point out immediately is that they do such a good job in this penultimate episode of really just making you feel like anybody could die. I mean, there are so many things that they do within this penultimate episode that kind of gave me that sense that maybe we're going to lose this character. You know, when Eddie's talking to Dustin and he talks about like how great of a friend he's been to him and things like that, and how he's happy that he gave him a chance, you know, and turned him around in that way. You know, that's kind of a sense that maybe he'll die. When Steve is talking to Robin and talking about how many kids he wants to have and things like that, you know, I thought this was a sense that, oh my god, we're gonna lose Steve here. When Robin is talking to Steve about how I don't know if we can win this one, you get the sense that something could potentially happen to Robin. Max luring herself over to Vecna in an effort to you know, finally destroy Vecna once and for all, and thinking that she needs to bait herself, use herself as bait for Vecna. You kind of get the sense that Max could die here. You know, what Nancy goes through in the beginning with her and Vecna and him, basically telling her his entire life story pretty much, and now her having all these details, and you're wondering what's going to happen with that. They did such an excellent job of just constantly making you feel so unsafe, making you feel so worried for all of these characters. So when we get to that moment at the end of episode 8, when they are going into the Creel house, I mean, I was so pumped to see how it was going to go down, but I was also so terrified for all of these characters, and I really like the way they end up setting that up, because you felt the stakes here. It legitimately felt like somebody major is dying here. The show is going to be irrevocably changed forever, and I would say it is. I mean, no, it didn't turn out quite the way that we expected, but I feel like all of this was warranted. I don't feel like they cheapened out. I feel like they set up necessary stakes that, yeah, these characters could really be at risk here. These characters could really die, because they're not all together. They're all separated. They're all trying to achieve the same goal, but they're doing it in different ways, and they don't have the unity that they usually do. And that's something that always, is, I think, the thing that helps them defend the creatures that they do. Vecna is a whole other beast entirely, and they don't even know what they're really up against. So I think all of that was really well done within this episode. There's a lot of stuff that we get here that I just really liked. The moments with Max and Lucas, I thought were really well done. Within the penultimate episode, I thought they did, some really good stuff when it came to those characters, but also when it came down to Jason and everything going on there, we really do get the sense that they are just diving headfirst into this whole cult thing, and they feel that anybody associated with Eddie could potentially be a part of it. And it's really crazy to watch, but again, it makes sense because of how much everyone has been convinced that this is a thing, that there is this cult that's destroying everyone, and that they need to unite against it. As ridiculous as it seems, I like that they really did end end up committing to that overall. I thought that was, really good scene, but it also showed the naivety in Jason, how strong he feels about what is happening, how he is so convinced of something and nobody can really tell him otherwise. And so when they're in, that gun shop and you see all of them in there and, they want to know, what's going on. And, he's questioning Mike about things and things like that. And it's a really well done scene. I really like the way that all ended up I really like the way that ended up going overall. Which, oh my God, let's just get into this finale because, look, I understand that a lot of people were expecting a little bit more from this finale, especially with how much they set up in the past few episodes. But just the epic scale, the fact that this episode was like 2.5 hours long, that alone was enough of a reason to get me excited for this finale. And I really do think, despite some things not turning out the way we expected, this was still every bit as epic as we could have hoped for, and I think really sets things up well for the final season. But I think we should just get started with the way this finale starts off. Everyone pretty much at this point has their own sort of plan when it comes to Vecna. Now, the one part of the show we haven't talked about as much is the Russian crew, who I liked a lot more in these 2 episodes. I thought that they were a lot more effective. I liked seeing the work with Joyce and Hopper and them kind of repairing their relationship and kind of officially confirming their relationship. We actually see that it seems like they are together now, and I think that was a very satisfying, payoff to see. We always knew that the feelings were there, but they never really had that moment, and they get that moment in this finale, and that's something that I definitely really did enjoy. It's a really good moment for Hopper. You can see that he's really taken the time to, while he's in prison, to recognize the importance of Joyce in his life, and that's something that I really did appreciate. And the way that they get in on the action, basically with the Demodogs, and we see Hopper just tearing apart those Demodogs, was such a great moment. And then, of course, Murray filleting them was really fun to watch. I love the way that whole sort of thing went down. Even the conversation that Enzo and Yuri have, I thought was still very effective, where we can see at first that Yuri isn't sure if he really wants to get involved with this, and Enzo, really convinces him to do so. Even little moments like that, I thought worked really well. There was not a single scene in this episode, at least for me, where I was like, I would cut that out. That wasn't necessary. I think even this scene where basically he berates him for treating Americans so coldly and things like that, and he talks about this evil that can harm their families and lives and how they need to team up together. We still got something out of every single conversation. I don't think a moment was wasted in this episode. And so, yeah, while the Russian plot maybe wasn't as essential as everything else going on, they certainly made it feel like it was as essential in this finale, because they still were a part of the plan. They still were trying to do what they can to lure away Vecna. Even if they physically could not have been there, they still found a way to do so, and I thought that was really cool to see how all of that played out. And so I did quickly want to talk about, Russia and things like that. But that's really all I have to say when it comes to the Russia stuff. I do still think it is the weakest part of the season, but I do think it was a lot stronger in these 2 episodes. And they did enough good work in these last 2 episodes for me to really not be an issue for me anymore. And like I said, there are a lot of quieter moments before we get to the really big stuff that I thought was still really well done. Steve basically apologizing to Nancy pretty much for what he's done, ruminating on his past and decisions that he's made. It's a really great moment for this character. I'm sure a lot of people thought that this would kind of be a hint that Steve might just bite the dust right then and there, but I still think this is a really great moment for him, and it really does track with his entire storyline. I feel like they've really been setting up, Nancy and Steve getting to a place where they forgive each other. Well, he really doesn't have much to forgive her for. She obviously wants to forgive him. But you really do see how much Steve has changed, and I thought this was just a really great moment there. When we get to Max and Lucas and their whole moment, where basically the two of them, you can see how happy they are together, even though they are not they are communicating through a piece of paper. We still get this really great moment where basically Max is telling Lucas that how glad that she is that he's here with her, and Lucas asked her out to the movies and things like that, and she basically shows this like drawing of them at the movies. I mean, things like that I just really liked. I thought it was a really good way to not just give us some really good like character building moments, but really up the stakes of what's going on here, show how much these characters' lives are on the line, and really gives us a sense of just how devastating it'll be to lose anyone in this scenario. I thought they did a really good job with that. Even the moment with Argyle, who I liked a lot more actually in these two episodes. I just thought he had more funny material to work with. When they are trying to convince, when Argyle and Eleven are trying to convince Mike to try pineapple pizza, and he's unsure about it, like little things like that, I actually thought worked really well. And I think if you remove them, I don't think this episode is as strong. I think you needed those quieter moments to really help those, the bigger, moments feel that much more effective, feel that much more devastating when they happen. So they really do hit in that way. And I thought they did such a great job with that here. But we got to talk about everything else that goes down here, because basically when it comes to, both the California and, and Hawkins, they really do intersect in this episode. This is really the episode where everything does come together. We don't physically see them come together until a little bit later on, but they are kind of on their own. They've been on their own separate journeys throughout the season. This is really where they're all coming together for one common goal. On the California side, we have Eleven and her trying to do what she can to get to Max. She knows that Max is going to try to lure herself to Vecna. She wants to do what she can to make sure that she is not alone. She wants to piggyback off of her, which is why this episode is called The Piggyback, because she is the one that's going to find a way to make sure that Max does not die, that Max lives through this. She's going to do whatever she can to try to save her. And we get this moment where she's trying to access her memories. That's her entire thing in this episode. And, her reuniting with Mike and that entire crew, I just thought worked so well here. I really love the moment where, you're not sure if Eleven is really going to be able to push through this. She's very adamant about finding Max. She is going through all these different memories. And I thought we were going to get a little bit more insight on Max, but we don't really get a ton more. We get to see Max and her with, her when she was younger with Billy a little bit, but nothing really that we didn't already know. But of course, the most important part of this is when she is eventually able to access her memories, and Max is reminded of the happiest memory, which is the dance when she first kissed Lucas at the I believe it was a winter formal. There was like a winter formal, and they end up kissing there. And this is where Vecna eventually does corner Max. And my God, this entire sequence with like the balloons popping blood and things like that was some of the creepiest stuff we have ever seen in the show. But eventually we have that confrontation between Eleven and Vecna. And my God, this was everything that I could have hoped for when they came to this confrontation, what they ended up doing there. Max is trying, Eleven is trying to do what she can to get to Vecna, say that, she knows that, she knows that, Brenner hurt him and that there's still good inside of him. She's trying to talk to Henry. She wants to try to bring out the Henry part of Vecna, but we realize that Henry is kind of too far gone at this point, because predictably, we realize that Vecna has actually been the one behind everything. He's been pulling all the strings. He's been pulling all the strings. He's the one that's been leading the Upside Down. He created like the Mind Flayer and things like that. In fact, it was his plan all along for the gate to be opened. When, you see Billy in season 3 and him telling Eleven, like, we've been waiting for you. It's all led up to Vecna. And I thought they did this perfectly. I know some people were worried that this was like kind of like a last minute thing, but I thought this makes a lot of sense. I like the fact that we now have a threat, that is the face of our show, is the main antagonist of our show, that can psychologically torment our characters. He's not just some faceless creature. He actually can communicate. He is sentient in that way, and I think it's more exciting for sure, because not just because of how great of a villain Vecna has been, but also because of seeing what he can do, the way he can manipulate these characters so easily. These long sort of, these moments he has, of dialogue where he's talking about, his entire thing, how he saw when he first got there, he thought he was dying, but then realized that, 11 actually saved him, and now he had purpose and things like that. Oh, it was just all so good. And can I just say, I did not realize that Jamie Campbell Bower also does the voice for Vecna. I thought Jamie Campbell Bower was just in the flashbacks. No, Jamie Campbell Bower does all the voice work for Vecna, and my God, he is just amazing in this role. I love what he's doing here. He's so menacing, but also so motivated. You understand Vecna's motivation. You understand what he wants to do. He wants to basically bring the Upside Down to the real world. That's been his plan all along. He wants just as much control there as he does in the Upside Down, and he just absolutely killed it in this scene. But then Mike basically confesses how much he loves her. And this was such a strong moment, because I know people have not liked Mike this season, but I have said readily along that this was the plan. They wanted to present a Mike that isn't as appreciative of Elle and isn't really giving her that, affection that she really needs, isn't really giving her that support, when we realize that no, he did feel that way, he just didn't know how to say it. And her saying that, she's his superhero and things like that. It's just a really powerful moment, and seeing her just unleash and just wail on Vecna, getting the upper hand, and basically, doing what she can to save Max. It was just such a powerful moment, the way that whole thing played out. I think the way they were able to build tension throughout this finale was just incredible. We start off, we realize everyone has their own little mission that they're doing, phases as they call them within Hawkins. You have basically Erica trying to give the signal to Max and Lucas. Max is going to lure herself to Vecna. Nancy, Steve, and Robin are going to go in the Upside Down and basically fillet Vecna pretty much with all this different stuff they have. And then you have Dustin and Eddie, and they are going to try to do what they can to go in the Upside Down and draw the bats away. So it's a very elaborate plan, and the way that we kept cutting back to it throughout the episode, they just did a really great job with. Yeah, there was a lot going on, but every single plot point, you just feel so uneasy when you're first watching it. Even on second watch, when you know what happens, you're still feeling very uneasy, because there are so many ways that this can go wrong, that something might not work out here, that they've underestimated Vecna in that way. And I think that's what we come to the conclusion of in this episode, is that they did underestimate Vecna. But yet the mission still is able to go pretty much the way that they planned, aside from a couple things. And then, of course, this is also paired with everything going on in Russia, and Hopper struggling to take down the Demogorgons, but then eventually slicing through one of them with his swords, which was really awesome to watch. But of course, there are obstacles that get in the way for everyone, whether it's something as simple as, we see that things aren't timed the way that they're supposed to, or the bats aren't being drawn away all the way, or we see that, with the Nancy, Steve, and Robin, when they're getting lured to Vecna, Vecna seems to suspect what's going on. They get tied in these vines, and you think, oh my God, we're going to lose one of them, when Eddie and Dustin are with the bats, and it seems like they've drew them away, but Eddie wants to go back, and Eddie wants to make sure that all the bats are gone, that there's no, that the bats are out of sight. And he decides to go back. You're freaking out over what's going to happen there. Whether it's, Erica and her having to get away from the entire cult that's now against Eddie and things like that. You don't know what's going to happen there. But I think probably the most intense is everything going on with Max and Lucas, because holy shit, I think, listen, every single actor in this episode gave the best performance they have within the entire show. I think every actor was legitimately on their A game. But I generally think this episode belonged to Max and Lucas. Both Sadie Sink and K.O. McLaughlin just fucking killed it in this episode. The scene where Max is basically confessing that she wasn't as sincere about Billy. She did kind of want him dead at first because of all the misery that he caused and how much this upset her, and how she, we kind of see she didn't know whether he deserved to be saved because of all of the torment that he caused her. And she's had this inability to forgive herself ever since. And, basically she wants to be the one that was taken because she feels that guilt in that way. And she kind of, wanted him to disappear all along. It's such an amazing moment because it feels like this is something that Max has been hiding the entire season. Even though she seemingly got closure, this was the part that she was afraid to admit. She wanted to do everything she can to try to show that love for her brother, but in reality, she was conflicted because, well, Billy wasn't a good brother to her. She never felt like Billy was a brother to her. Billy always tormented her. Billy always treated her like shit. They never had a good relationship, and yet she always felt so much guilt. She always felt like there was more that she could have done to potentially save him, and it's just such a powerful moment. And this moment alone, I think, is the reason that Sadie Sink absolutely should have gotten an Emmy nomination. Like, straight up, the fact that she didn't is just absolutely criminal. And she killed it this entire season. I think she was the star of this entire season. But it's moments like this, I think, that really just showcase how amazing of an actress she is. And then when we realize that Lucas is now under Vecna's possession, and he is calling out to Max and telling her that she is disgusting for thinking these things and things like that, and that she's a monster and all this stuff. We realize that Max is now under Vecna's spell, and there's that moment with Vecna where he gets Max, and you think Max is gonna die. I mean, the way that whole thing turned out with Max basically being under Vecna's control, we see her arms start to move and bones start to break, and I was like, oh my god, they're actually gonna do it. And while that's going on, we have Lucas and Jason, and they're kind of, Lucas is kind of getting to the conclusion of his arc. His entire arc of this season has been him kind of having to live these two different lives. In one life, he's the popular jock. He's got all these, friends and things like that. He's very cool. He's one of the cool kids and everybody really loves him. But then on the other side, you have his former friends who are not really in that group and are constantly kind of picked on by those characters and feel kind of ostracized. And he's kind of had to pick a side. And while he picked a side early on, this was the moment where he fully comes to terms with what's happened. He tries to get Jason to listen to reason, that Max is not, Max is not under possession or anything like that. There's no like devil worshipping. Max is under a spell, and that, she needs to, they need to deal with this carefully. And Jason just goes ballistic. Jason is so convinced that Lucas is a part of this cult that doesn't exist, and he lashes out at Lucas. We get this moment where there's a full-on fight between them, and this whole sequence was just absolutely incredible, and Erica trying to lure the others away. The way that whole thing went down, it was just amazing. And I said it from the beginning, like, Jason is gonna die because of his own ignorance, and that's basically what happened here. He got so swept up into thinking that this cult was real and that Eddie was the root of all evil that he couldn't actually see the real problem here. He couldn't see that maybe there's more to the story. He just did everything he can to get his vengeance on Chrissy, but didn't stop to think, does this actually make sense? Could this actually be the case? And because of that, what ended up happening to Jason does happen to him. But that whole thing was just so nerve-wracking to watch. And of course, we got to get to the really emotional stuff when 11 does defeat Vecna, though it seems that she's defeated Vecna, and though it seems like, the group of Steve, Robin, and Nancy have also defeated Vecna, and everything else has worked out, we do have some casualties here, unfortunately. We lose... Seemingly, we think we lose Max, and that whole moment with Lucas where he is trying to get Max to wake up was the best acting I've ever seen from Caleb McLaughlin, where he is crying out. He thinks that she's gone forever. You can just see the pain, the anguish that he's gone through. It feels so raw in that way. I have seen Caleb McLaughlin act before. I've never seen him be as good as he was in this scene. This was easily the best he's ever been in this show. I really love how front and center Lucas was this season. Maybe he wasn't at first, but he really turned out to be, I think, one of the most prominent characters of the season, and it's moments like this that really just showcased why I loved what they end up doing with him here. Was such a tragic moment, and it convinced me that Max is a goner, and that there's no coming back from this. And I was really upset at first. I was like, oh my god, we finally got some really great work from Max, and then they just decided to kill her off. Yes, it made sense because this season focused so heavily on her. I would say this season kind of was even about her to some extent. But I just thought that it was really just so tragic to think about, and the fact that they were going to kill her off after all of that, I was just really sad. It was just really saddening to watch, and I honestly was a wreck when it ended up happening, which we'll get to more of that in a little bit. But then we got to circle back here. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but there's a lot that happened in this finale, okay? Eddie. Let's talk about Eddie, because Eddie is the actual death of this season. Eddie actually does end up biting the dust here, and it's quite sad. I think he dies in a mostly satisfying manner, where he does die a hero's death. Dustin is trying to get him to come back to, come back through the Upside Down. But Eddie, the second that he broke the thing that pulls them through, I knew he was a goner after that. Like, I knew, nope, there's no coming back from this. And when Eddie basically talks about, how he wanted to be a hero, and he feels like he is a hero now, it's just such an amazing moment, because at the beginning of the season, Eddie was kind of a coward. He didn't want to face any conflict. He wanted to run away from it, and to see him now get to a point where he is facing it head on, and he wants to be the one to sacrifice himself to make sure that this conflict is gone forever, even knowing that, not even knowing about how much his name has been poisoned throughout the town. It's just such an satisfying way for him to go out. It's obviously very sad, because I loved Eddie as a character. I think there was definitely a lot more they could have done with him, but I think they got as much as they could with him this season. I think they got a lot of merit out of this character, not just because of Joseph Quinn's performance, but also what they did with Eddie, especially in these last two episodes, really highlighting his friendship with Dustin, seeing everything that he's had to go through, the fact that he's become this pariah of sorts, but he doesn't care. He wants to pull through that. He wants to make sure that he is seen as a hero, and just that whole moment was so sad to watch. And the song they picked during both of these scenes did not make this any better. I mean, When It's Cold, I'd Like to Die, that song that they played, just made this so much more devastating to watch. And I really love that they just ended up going for it. They didn't hold back. And yeah, once again, they killed the new character. But it's not, I think a lot of people saw this coming, that Eddie was probably going to die, but I think this is a really good way for him to go out. I think it's easily one of the saddest deaths in the entire show, because there's so much more that Eddie could have done, but I think for a seasonal long arc and him having the role that he did, I think this was a good way for him to go out overall. I was very saddened by this, but overall I was satisfied with how this played out. But then the way everything wrapped up was such an incredible way to wrap up the season. We basically see that because Max has died, Vecna needed his the four chimes to go off. Vecna has his fourth victim, and with that, pretty much, even though Vecna was defeated, his plan still was enacted. We see basically half of the town is destroyed. The Upside Down is like protruding through Hawkins. We see Jason dies probably the most grisly death I think we have seen in this show, where he's literally split in half in seconds. The way that it was done as well, I thought was just incredible, because this is how Jason is going to be remembered. He's just forgotten about that quickly, decimated in seconds, and it's his own ignorance that ended up killing him. I love how quickly it was done. I love how brutal it was. I love that they didn't hold back. But yeah, basically the Upside Down destroys half the town. And the way this episode ended was different than I was really expecting. We do get a time jump, not nearly as big as I think some people anticipate. It was really only just a couple days. But everyone's reeling from the tornado the earthquake that happened. Obviously, it was not an earthquake. The Upside Down is coming to Hawkins, and we get some really interesting stuff, I think, in this final 20 minutes, which I like the fact that even though we ended on this really crazy note, we still get like 20 minutes to really just get those character building moments. It was a really good way of wrapping up some arcs for this season, whether it's Dustin and him talking to Eddie's uncle about how great of a guy Eddie was and that he is a hero, and he wants Eddie to be remembered that way, but nobody's going to be able to remember him that way because, you know, Jason and all the parents have tainted his memory, and there's nothing that Dustin can do about it except remember exactly who Eddie actually was. It's such an amazing moment. It is, I think, easily the best Gaten Matarazzo, similar to Kevin McLaughlin, has ever been in this show. You could tell, you know, the passion that he had for Eddie, the friendship that he had, just such an amazing arc for this character. I really love what we got to see here, the way that, you know, he still wanted to make sure that Eddie's uncle, who he never really had that great of a relation with, and Eddie wanted to reconnect with in that way, that Eddie's uncle saw the good in him, and that he was not this loser. He was not a slacker. He was a hero, and he did live up to his full potential, but nobody's ever going to know about it because, again, everyone's latched onto this idea of the Hellfire Club. And I really like what this season has done in terms of like conspiracy theories and how we can get so wrapped up in these ideas that it draws attention away from the actual conflict. And that's been a big part of, not a huge part, but it's been a really good, like, I think, consistent element of this season is seeing Hawkins in disarray, and still they have this easy explanation for it that when you think about it for a couple seconds doesn't make any fucking sense. But people like Jason, people like the other parents are so willing to buy into it, and I think this is a perfect example of that. Eddie is not a bad guy. Eddie is someone who he was a hero. You can watch back multiple parts of this season even. Yes, when Chrissy comes to him looking for drugs, you know, you can see that as a negative thing, but he was doing that as a way to help her cope with what she was going through, to make sure that Chrissy was, you know, that Chrissy was on a better path, that Chrissy had, you know, that Chrissy wasn't feeling the things that she was anymore. He wanted to be that genuine friend to her. Through and through, Eddie wore his heart on his sleeve, and you can see the moment where Dustin is telling, his uncle about it. It's just so freeing for him because now suddenly he has someone to talk to. It was just such an amazing moment, the way that all went down. Other things we get within this finale with Robin and her and Vicky actually making a genuine connection. It seemed like Vicky wasn't interested in Robin, but they have this connection at the homeless shelter, where basically, you know, they're trying to, you know, Steve and Robin and Dustin, they're doing all these like different clothing donations and things like that, and her and Vicky kind of strike up this conversation, and I really like where this is headed. I think that, you know, if we're able to get more of this character, I think she could be a really big focal point within, not a huge focal point, but I think for Robin's storyline, it's going to be really big heading into season 5, and I like that it seems like, this could actually be a really good direction for Robin. Robin can now be with someone that generally loves her, generally understands her, and I'm very excited to see where that ends up going overall. I think that was a really good moment for this finale. But of course, we have to talk about the reuniting of these characters, seeing Eleven and Mike and Will and all of them, reunite with Jonathan and Nancy was just fantastic to watch. I love the way this was all done. It was everything that we really could have wanted. We get a brief moment with Jonathan and Nancy even where it seems like there's a bit of tension in their relationship. Jonathan lies to Nancy that he hadn't heard back from college, that he didn't get anything, when in reality he did of course get a letter, and he just for some reason decided to lie to her about it. So I think that's going to be something that's kind of interesting. The fact that Jonathan straight up is lying to her, I think that's going to be a big point of contention in season 5. But we also see that Jonathan still doesn't really trust Steve all that much, and Nancy's trying to tell him, hey, he's changed. And that is something I didn't realize. Like, Jonathan doesn't realize that Steve is a much better person now, that Steve is more responsible. Steve has grown a lot. He hasn't had that interaction with him, and I'm very excited to see if in season 5 we're able to get that. I have a feeling that season 5 is going to be the complete opposite of the season, where now everyone's together, everyone's going to be fighting alongside each other. We're going to get those interactions that we've been hoping for. I've personally enjoyed the splitting of different groups. I think it's been a good way to keep things from being super convoluted, but with the final season, I think it makes sense to have everyone together, and it seems like that is what's going to happen moving into season 5. So I thought that, of course, was a really great moment. And then, of course, the best, I think, reuniting of them all is between Eleven and Hopper, and this was just everything that I hoped for. When we see Hopper, and Eleven is stunned that he's alive, and she's breaking down in tears, and, she talks about how she never stopped believing that he was alive. She always kept the door open 3 inches, hoping that one day he would emerge from it, and it's just such an amazing moment. You're reminded how great of chemistry David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown really have, and I am so excited for more interactions with these two. If anything, I think bringing Hopper back, even though I'm still not exactly thrilled that they decided to bring this character back, I've come to peace with it at this point, and I feel like a big reason for that is that there's still more they can do with this character. There's more interplay we can get between him and Eleven, especially now that he has come to terms with being a father. He has renewed love for everyone. He now has even more of a purpose. He knows what he's meant to do, and I love when they're talking about how much they've changed physically with Eleven now having her losing her hair and him having less hair. I thought was a really fun moment between those two, and I just really liked what we ended up getting overall. I thought there was a lot that there's still obviously a lot of conversations that these two need to have, but I think this was really everything we could have hoped for in terms of the reuniting between these two. But the only other things to really talk about in the last couple minutes of this finale, we do get this moment between Mike and Will, where Will basically talks about how, hey, even though we seemingly defeated Vecna, I feel like he's still out there. I sense something. And this really gives me the sense that the Duffer brothers are being serious when they say Will is going to be a focal point in season 5. I really hope that is the case. Noah Schnapp is an amazing actor. He's had 2 phenomenal scenes this season, just in these 2 episodes alone, and I am really hoping that they utilize his talents, because I think there's a lot that they can do with this character, especially now him having the connection to the Upside Down, knowing more of what's going on. I'm interested in seeing what they can do with that. Are him and Vecna going to have interactions? Is Vecna going to psychologically torment him? I feel like Will is going to be one of the main focuses of season 5, and I'm very excited to see what they end up doing with him sensing the fact that Vecna is still out there. And of course, Vecna is still out there, because the way this episode ends was just perfect. Everybody, staring out into the sky. They see this snow falling down. They know that it's not snow. They know that it's debris from the Upside Down, and they know pretty much that war is pretty much about to happen. War is very much coming to Hawkins, and they are not nearly prepared for the fight that they are about to endure. I'm very excited to see what havoc is really unleashed throughout Hawkins, but also how they're going to be able to sum it all up in a time jump, because the Duffer brothers did say we're going to have a pretty big time jump next season, and I don't know how the hell they're going to be able to explain all of that, but I really like the way this ended, all of them just staring at that one shot especially is one of the best shots within the entire show. I love the remix version of the theme song as well. It's more epic. It's more, it feels more immediate. You really, it's just, everything is feeling so much more dire. Everything's feeling so much more important in that way. It feels like, yes, we are heading into the final season, and I just really liked the way all of that wrapped up there. I think it was the perfect way to end this off. But then, of course, the only real big lingering thread to talk about is what happened with Max. We think at first that Max is dead, but then at the last second, 11 pulls off some new ability where she can now resurrect Max, pretty much. She does revive her, but what I like about this is that Max is not left completely unscathed. She is, at least right now, blind and in a coma, and she hasn't woken up in quite a few days, and also seems like her mind is nowhere to be found. 11 tries to find her, and she cannot track 11, and she cannot track Max, and I feel like there are a couple things I really like with this. One, I think it does a really good job of building the tension for season 5, giving us now even more of a reason to, root for these characters to take down Vecna, because now we have this whole, really good mystery of what happened to Max. Is Max going to come back from her coma? I'm sure she will. Sadie Sink is way too good of a talent to just waste like that. I don't think she's going to be in a coma for the entire season. I think she is going to wake up at some point. But we have to know, but it's, now just going to be, it's now just going to be a question of what exactly happened to her. Well, it is worth noting that we were told that every time Vecna possesses someone, he gains a part of them. So he could have very well gained a part of Max's mind. Maybe he is controlling Max in that way and she's with Vecna, or maybe she's elsewhere. I do think a big part of 11's storyline next season is, how do I find a way to connect back to Max? How do I get back to being her piggyback in that way? I'm excited to see how that all does play out, but I also like that we haven't lost Sadie Sink. I think she was so good this season. I think it's good that they found a way to keep her around. So while, yes, it definitely would have been very effective if they killed Max off, I think it's honestly for the betterment of the story, because now there is even more stakes, because now you have this whole thing of what is going to happen to Max. She's so vital to season 5, even if she isn't as major of a role at first. I think she's definitely going to play a very big role in the story, because obviously we need to find a way to get her to come back. And if she does, is she going to, have this now? Is she now going to have this, impairment? Is she going to be full? Is she going to be permanently blind? Is she going to be able to walk? Apparently her limbs are also severely, her muscles and things like that are not working. So there are a lot of possibilities for what they can do with Max moving forward, some of which are absolutely devastating to think about, but I'm just excited that this character is still alive on the show. She might not be well, but I'm glad that she's still there, because I think it just builds more intrigue for next season of what is really going to happen. I think they really just did a great job of laying the groundwork for season 5, but also closing out this season perfectly. So yeah, overall, I think I've gushed enough about this season. This was really everything that I think Stranger Things needed to do. They continued to, utilize what worked in other seasons, the charm, the really great character building, the nostalgia, but also finding ways to do their own thing with it, the horror elements, but also really doubling down on the new things, really diving deeper into those horror elements, upping the stakes, giving us some much more challenging material for these characters. These movie-long episodes that felt by the end, these longer episodes that by the end felt like movies, the visual scale of what they were going for, the scope of everything they just really delivered on this season. And yes, it was very dense at points. Yes, there was a lot going on, but I think all of it was vital for this story. I mean, I feel like by the end of the season, this is the most satisfied I've ever been ending a season of Stranger Things. I feel like even characters like, say, Will, who weren't a major player, still had something, still had some remnant of a story. And I think that's something that they accomplished very well this season. I think the Russian storyline that I wasn't too sure how to feel about at first actually end up being a pretty satisfyingly emotional arc for Hopper, who finally accepts a lot of the things that he has been kind of unsure about. He now is pursuing a relationship with Joyce. He has a even stronger relationship with Eleven now, as with his daughter. I think there's a lot of things that they can still do with that character moving forward. Vecna as a villain was everything I would have hoped for, and a completely different presence than we've ever had in the show when it comes to the other threats, because he is a verbal presence in that way. The way he psychologically and emotionally tormented these characters, the way that characters died this season were so much more grisly and graphic. Not just Jason at the end of the season, but thinking all the way back to Chrissy, the way that whole thing went down, how shocking it was. I mean, this season did not hold back. They did everything they could to really make this season work. You can tell that they had a lot of time off, and they really wanted to do what they can to make up for that lost time and really take that time to make the best season possible. And I think they absolutely did deliver on that. So many amazing performances this season, but Sadie Sink and Millie Brown, and by the end, even Caleb McLaughlin, I think are the MVPs of this season. So much amazing character development and really setting the stage well for season 5, which they said is going to be very different. It's not going to be as many episodes. It's not going to be as long in terms of episode lengths and things like that, but we most likely are going to get it weekly because Netflix has recently announced that they're going to start utilizing weekly episodes a lot more than they have up to this point. And so I think this release strategy actually worked really well for Stranger Things. Yeah, was it weird to get 2 episodes? Yes, but they were much longer than the episodes we're used to. And so I think by doing that, they still were able to build momentum. People were constantly talking throughout that month and a half about what's going to happen in season 4, part 2. Hell, I did a podcast on my other channel with my girlfriend and a few of my other friends talking and dissecting theories about what was going to happen in these last 2 episodes. And I think the fact that Netflix ultimately decided to split it into 2 parts, I think was the right decision. And I think moving forward, this is really going to help the show moving forward. I just really love everything they brought to the table this season. The mythology, the visuals, everything just worked so well within season 4. And it ended, I think, in the best way possible. Yeah, we didn't have the major character deaths that we were expecting, but I think what we got still was very effective, still was a very emotional and epic hour of television that I definitely could not have that I definitely could not have been any more impressed by. I just really love everything this season ended up accomplishing. I feel like this is exactly what we've always wanted Stranger Things to be. Stranger Things has always been great. It has, but I feel like this is them really just surpassing our expectations and finding ways to still, 4 seasons in, give us some fresh material that truly turn this into an even more original show than we would have thought of. I think so many great ideas this season, so much great character work. And yes, this season was very dense in terms of storytelling, but I think it only helped all these storylines flourish that much more. With the California story, everything we got with Eleven, it is so much clearer now what they've been doing with her character, having this whole arc of her at first thinking she might be a monster, and now finally coming to the terms of the fact that, no, I am a hero. I'm here to save everybody. I'm here to, I'm here to, do what I can to help everyone, I think was just a really great moment for that character. Even Mike, a character that was so unlikable throughout the first half of the season, got his moment in these last 2 episodes where he came to terms with the fact that, yeah, I am in love with 11. I just didn't really know how to express it before, and I really love what they end up doing with that. So many great moments for so many different characters. Steve's, sort of character development he got throughout the season, Nancy and him, the whole thing going on there. There is so much that this season was able to do because they had the time, because of the fact that they utilized that runtime. I never felt like there was an episode that felt too long this season. They really just felt like they knew the story they wanted to tell, and they knew that they would need longer episodes to do it, and I think it very much did end up paying off for them in the end. So I really don't have any complaints on that front either. Like I said before, just the scope of the season was absolutely unreal. The fact that we could get a budget like this for television, and the fact that it delivered as much as it did. So many iconic moments, so many great shots. The look of Vecna is some of the most tangible effects I've ever seen for a creature of that nature. I loved what they ended up doing there. Amazing storytelling, an amazing score, just such incredible performances from everyone. Season 4 truly is just this show firing on all cylinders. It is taking what already worked and finding their own way to expand upon it and do something different that we really haven't seen before in the show, diving deeper into horror elements, deepening character arcs, and really just doing everything they can to set the stage for what I think will be a truly epic final season of this incredible show. This is by far one of the best seasons of television I have seen all year, and absolutely Stranger Things Season 4 gets an A+. Like I said, I know that this is a very late video. I do apologize for that. I just have not had the time to review this until now. But other than that, guys, very happy with the way Season 4 did turn out. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, comment down below. Let me know what you guys thought of these last 2 episodes. Love to hear your thoughts on them. We'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.